Alien is one of the most beloved sci-fi films of the 20th century. It's been widely referenced and parodied, with a lot of the iconography in the film becoming shorthand in discussions of popular culture. In short, it's a great film, but I feel that a lot of the actual creation of the film isn't talked about as much as it should. Which is a shame, as there's a lot to talk about, including shot composition, sound design, art design, and today's topic, editing. This will be a general overview highlighting moments of editing and how it affects the tone of the story. I will be going chronologically throughout the narrative, but I won't be covering every single scene. I highly recommend watching the film before watching this video, as I'll be referring to the characters by name, and I'll be discussing the film on the assumption that you're familiar with it. I will also be using the theatrical cut of the film for this video. It's not because I prefer it over the director's cut, because I don't have any strong feeling for either. A lot has been said about the film, from the stellar production design that gives the ship a real lived-in feeling, to the alien itself and the components of its design that contribute to our psychosexual fears. With this video, I wanted to look at the film in a way that maybe says something that hasn't been said before, and will hopefully be entertaining and informative. Alien is a very interesting film because of how it's split into two very different pieces with distinct tones. The first section is a slow-moving science fiction epic, and then this happens. With this, the film basically changes into an entirely different genre, which comes with its own stylistic choices. From this moment, the film then becomes a tense slasher experience where we watch the titular alien hunt down and kill the crew one by one. Both genres in Alien can have preconceived ideas of visual language and styles of editing. For example, a horror film may use quick cuts to convey a sense of tension, or a drama film could use longer takes in order to convey the emotion of a scene. Now, even though I described the first section as slow, I don't mean this as an insult. Alien would feel very different without this first half, and if the time wasn't given to characterising the crew and their ship, the Nostromo, the second half wouldn't have the impact that it does. The film opens on this very memorable title drop, where sections of the word alien slowly fade in against a backdrop of space. I've always loved the vibe this creates. It makes space seem less inviting or fun than something like the then recently released Star Wars, and the low hum of the background music makes it feel cold and empty. With another fade, the Nostromo is brought into view. A quick block of text gives information about who and what is on the ship. While this is a form of tell don't show, I think it's better this way because it gives us more time for characterisation and relationship building, which ultimately is always more important. It also helps to give context to the dialogue about shares when Parker and Brett bring this up later. We are shown some long takes with slow camera movement that bring us toward the cryopods where the crew are sleeping. These help to give us some geography and help the audience to get as familiar as possible with the environment like the crew are. The props on display also help to make the ship feel homely. As the crew wake from their pods, we get some slow fades that create quite a dreamlike atmosphere, which is apt since they're waking from a long sleep. This fades into another short one take where we see the crew interacting, which visually communicates their relationships with one another, like Brett and Parker laughing and joking, or Dallas watching them with a warm smile. Quick cuts are introduced when Parker mentions the share situation. Essentially, Brett and Parker are being paid less than the others, and these quick cuts show us that this is a point of contention between them and the others. Good visual storytelling like this helps get the point across and makes the moments later when the tension rises between them feel a bit more earned. Dallas goes to talk to the ship's computer named Mother, and I've always felt that cutting between him typing to it and the mid-shot of him reading her reply makes it feel like an actual conversation between the two. After they receive the signal from the planet, Dallas, Ash and Parker are shown in close-up as three different viewpoints arguing over whether they should go down to the planet. Again, just these small moments where things are being strained and Ash's true motivation is teased very slightly. A lot of time is taken in showing every step of the process where the shuttle detaches from the ship and flies down to the planet. This could have been edited down, but it's a great touch to make this technology feel more grounded, and we now know for the final showdown when Ripley tries to detach the shuttle, it's a lengthy process that ratchets up the tension. An element I haven't talked about yet is the sound editing. There are long stretches where the only sounds we get are ambient noises from the ship and dialogue between the characters. However, when Kane, Lambert and Dallas go down to the planet, the atmosphere is filled with thick winds that make it hard for the characters to communicate. This does die down in the soundscape, but it's an interesting way to highlight to the audience that this planet is immediately dangerous. A lot of directors wouldn't have the confidence to have a film spend long stretches in quiet, but like everything else in the first half, it's build up to when the shit starts to hit the fan. The cuts between the outside where the storm is and relative quiet are also great at juxtaposing the levels of safety from both places. The moment where Kane gets jumped by the facehugger is also a great little section that showcases some effective editing and shot composition. The cuts between Kane looking at the egg and the close-up where you can see something writhing around inside help make you empathise with Kane. Having them both in the frame as the egg opens, then the cut to another POV shot really drives the mystery and gives the moment the correct sort of pace. Then the moment the facehugger attacks Kane is short and sudden with 3 shots cut in quick succession. It immediately shows the crew are in serious trouble, and there's just enough visual information that you can piece together what happened for the proper reveal that's fully latched onto Kane's face. The sequence revealing Kane's condition is also very well paced. Enough time is given for the audience to come up with ideas of what the creature is doing, as well as how it can be removed. Then each idea is worked through, such as trying to pull it off, leading to it constricting more, a beat to scan him before making the decision to try and cut it off. All this slow, deliberate pacing through the editing helps to convey a lot of information that's important to the audience, like the alien's physiology and how it breeds, and also why their environment works against them by the acid blood eating through the hull. Ash calls Ripley and Dallas to the medical bay as the aliens now come off of Kane, and this is where we start the shift to the horror elements of the story. The characters search for the facehugger, and we cut to each of them searching. The shots get faster as they look, leading to the moment the dead alien falls onto Ripley, which is probably the best scare in the film. It's a perfect distillation of that fear we feel when a spider disappears from our sight in a room. When Kane wakes up, the film becomes a sort of ticking time bomb for a while. We know something has to happen, but not how. We open another scene of the characters eating with a wide, which then cuts to a mid on Kane as he's obviously the one we're supposed to be watching. As he begins to choke, the cuts get faster, building the tension. There's a very interesting insert of Ash's face here, which in hindsight is him obviously being very interested in what the alien is doing to Kane's body. As the alien pops out, there are multiple quick cuts. However, the focus is not really on the gore or on the alien first, as the camera lingers on the faces of the crew. I've always found this an interesting choice, as it highlights Scott's focus on character over spectacle. It's more important what the characters are feeling and why they're feeling it, rather than on gore for gore's sake. Then the money shot of the baby xenomorph. We get a long good look at it before it runs off, and the characters stand in silence for a beat, which allows the horror of the moment to really sink in. We've now officially transitioned into the horror part of this horror film. From here, the score becomes more pronounced and plays a lot more. The film's editing becomes quicker and more chaotic, and the pace becomes faster. The crew splits up to search for the alien, which they assume is still a small infant. We follow Brett, Parker and Ripley as they search a room. Before this, Ripley was given the infamous motion sensor, which is a great tool for sound design as it makes a distinct whirring sound. The sequel Aliens would go on to give the sensor a louder pinging sound that ultimately works better, I feel. This section, where the group thinks they've cornered it and it turns out to be Jonesy, is edited superbly. It builds just enough tension with some slow cuts that build until the reveal that it's the cat and not the alien. We sit with the 3 of them after they compose themselves, and Brett agrees to separate from them and grab the cat. This is simply a misdirect, so Brett has an excuse to be dragged away by the alien, which we see now has fully grown into its most famous look. This scene essentially does the same trick as before, but now the payoff is a look at the alien. The use of sound is also great here, as the water droplets and the clanging of chains make it hard to work out whether the alien is moving around the room or it's just the ambience of it.
Jonesy? Jonesy?
I've always wondered about how the next scene is shot and edited. The group are mostly shot in tight singles, and when they're framed together the subjects are noticeably spaced apart, like in this shot with Lambert and Ripley, and this shot of Parker, Ash and Dallas. The characters are scared and feeling pressured, which is being conveyed without much dialogue. Dallas comes up with a plan to close the air vents and force the alien into a spot where the crew can shoot it into outer space. A series of singles on each member of the crew give us their reactions, and the extreme close-ups and the quick cuts between them gives us some strong intensity. The small detail of having Parker's dialogue over the image of Lambert is also a nice touch that reinforces that they're quite a meek character. One last little comment, since I am overanalyzing a small scene, is this great bit of character development between Ripley and Dallas. Throughout the film they've butted heads, but I think this little look from him to her is acknowledging that she was right to try and stop him from entering the ship earlier. It's also a subtle bit of foreshadowing that Ripley ultimately takes charge once he's killed by the alien. Now this section is one of the most iconic moments from the film, as we get Dallas's journey into the vents and his death by the alien surprising him. All the geography is laid out very well, which makes it easy to follow. We see the crew block some doorways and stand with the vents open, so we know that the alien has to be in the vent with Dallas. Both Lambert and Ash have the motion trackers which were established earlier, and a single of its screen is shown to the audience since it's going to be cut to quite a few times in this scene. We're shown how small the vent is, which means if the alien is there, Dallas is kind of screwed. His voice is also given a bit of reverb, which communicates the sheer scale of these vents and how much ground he has to cover. The tracker also starts beeping, and this noise is constant throughout the scene to amplify the isolation, and it accompanies the score, which sounds very much like a heartbeat. The sound of the vent closing is great too, and the noise of the metal scraping together just puts you on edge. This section works because it's set up as a sort of mini-narrative. Everything that we've been shown works as the first act. The cuts between Dallas's movement through the vents and to outside of the crew members are perfectly paced to allow the tension to grow naturally. The steady rhythmic beeping of the tracker also makes you feel sort of at ease, because we know that the alien isn't that close to him yet. We then cut back to the screen of the motion tracker, which has also started to beat faster, so now we know that we've transitioned into the second act of the mini-narrative, because everything that was set up before is now being paid off. The cuts have become faster, and the sound design has changed to show an escalation. The dialogue and performances also reinforce this. The music starts to swell a bit here, which highlights that Dallas is starting to freak out a bit, and the tracker beats faster as the alien starts to move towards him. It's a nice detail that you can't actually hear the alien moving around in the vents. It's subtle priming for the fact that it's a level below Dallas, and the tracker isn't able to tell them what actual floor of the ship it's on. A quick insert of Ash's lack of expression is another little clue that he's actually an android, and aware of the actual mission of the science division. The mini-narrative ends with Dallas encountering the alien, which creates an explosion of noise as his headset creates feedback, along with the alien shrieking at him. It's one of the best jump scares of all time, crafted expertly through pacing and editing. Jumping ahead a little bit, Ripley has now taken charge of the situation and goes to talk to Mother about what to do. The film uses a couple of long takes here where we sit with Ripley as she inputs the information into the computer and it replies to her. It's very intentionally meant to harken back to when Dallas did this and he was given very unhelpful answers. However, this time obviously, Ripley is told what Ash's mission directive is with the iconic line, "Crew expendable." Hearing this is a huge blow for Ripley, so we're allowed to sit in this moment with her. Ash reveals himself and tries to kill Ripley to continue his mission. He's really made to feel like a big imposing figure here, with this cut from his face filling up the frame to Ripley's face where she's scared of him. We go slightly against genre stylings as we sit in a long take watching Ash attack Ripley. Most horror films would use quick cuts and close-ups to convey the raw emotion of something like this, but seeing it from this sort of distance gives it a voyeuristic feel, which I think works really well in this scene. Parker and Lambert come in and knock Ash's head off, which brings the film score back in, along with some really creepy sound effect Ash makes. I'm not sure what the sound is meant to be or what it's meant to be telling us, but it makes him feel as alien as the xenomorph. The crew bring Ash back online, and we get another iconic moment as he talks about the alien. His speech is coated in this thick layer of distortion which gives his words so much weight and really hammers in what he's saying.
I can't lie to you about your chances, but you have my sympathies.
With only the 3 crew members left, they resolve to blow up the ship and escape. Something I feel most people aren't aware of with this film is just how little the alien is actually in it. It's a smart choice to make the moments where it does appear feel huge, and it also allows the narrative to be backloaded with it and show tons of gore action. We get lulled into a sort of security by the amount of quiet sound design as well as the long takes here. This loud noise that cuts us from one perspective to another is a nasty little trick.
Chance. How you doing?
Fine.
It sort of fools your brain slightly because the way that Ripley's perspective is paced and edited, it makes you think that she's the one about to be attacked, whereas it's going to be Lambert and Parker who are both taken out here. Ignoring the context of it being presented with the language of film, it does make sense that Lambert and Parker are going to be killed here just because of the amount of noise they're making, which draws the alien towards them. It just goes to show how through osmosis we've taken in the visual language of film because it feels like it should be Ripley. It's both an excellent and horrific choice to not show the alien appearing to them, but only hearing their terrified reactions. It elevates the alien because we don't see how it got there, and it also helps put us into Ripley's perspective. She knows that she's essentially on her own here, and while we get to see less of the creature you came to see, it's absolutely worth it to create this tension and unease. We do get to see it kill them though. Like with Dallas before, the score swells, and through a montage of close-up, Parker is killed by the alien, and we're informed through the horrific sound editing that Lambert is also dead. The use of reverb that makes it echo throughout the halls of the ship is such a terrifying thing to hear. As Ripley prepares to evacuate on the ship, we see tons of quick cuts and close-ups that convey how frantic this process is and just how terrified she is. Because this section of the film is mostly dialogue free, this kind of conveyance is incredibly important in keeping an audience in tune with a character's emotional state. But the film just falls into absolute chaos, with the soundscape just full of alarms going off, steam being blasted everywhere, and Ripley's panicked breath. For a film that's mostly been pretty quiet, this feels almost like sensory overload, and it makes the finale of this film incredibly memorable and tense. After the ship blows up, we fade down into quiet as Ripley and the audience finally get a moment to breathe. This is another section that is perfectly paced and edited. We get some ambient music meant to convey a sense of peace, and we sit with Ripley and Jones for long shots that lull us into another false sense of security, which makes this moment all the more startling. Watching the alien slowly crawl out of its hiding space, intercut with Ripley putting the spacesuit on, is a great moment of setting up for the final confrontation. Having Ripley sing this little song to herself as she prepares herself is another great little touch that humanises her. The film goes loud one last time as the alien is shot out of the ship and vaporised by the ship engines. Ripley records her report for the black box. She finishes as the film ends with a fade out on her sleeping face. Alien is rightly considered a masterpiece of both science fiction and horror for many reasons. Hopefully I've managed to highlight how editing is one of the factors that makes it so great. The film was edited by Terry Rawlings and Peter Weatherly, both great of editing and sound design, and it's a highlight of both men's careers. One day I'd also like to do a video about the shot composition of this film, which is also fantastic. But for now, I hope you enjoyed this video, and I'll see you next time.